I'm Paul Cram, joined today by Joze Piranian. He is a lifelong stutterer turned Forbes featured TEDx speaker on inclusion and resilience.
Everyone has a stutter. Everyone has this inner stutter. For someone, it could be the fear of failure. For someone, it could be the fear of judgment, the fear of rejection, the fear of success.
Born and raised in Lebanon, Joze avoided speaking for more than 25 years out of the fear of being judged for being different. Then everything changed. He won the Inspirational Speaker of the Year, delivered 3 TEDx talks, and performed stand-up comedy in 3 continents and 4 languages. Joze has delivered keynotes at Google, Tesla, Dell, IBM, as well as educational institutes and conferences. With more than 3 million views on Goldcast, Joze has also been featured on TEDx, ABC, Forbes, Now This, and CBC. I can't wait to chat with him. Here we go. So, Joze, I'm so happy to be talking with you today. Welcome.
Thank you, Paul. It's really great to be here. And for the benefit of your listeners or viewers, I'll just mention that I have a stutter. Everyone's internet is working just fine.
Yes. That's a beautiful segue into my first question for you, Joze, which is, when did you realize that you wanted to do stand-up comedy?
Even though I've always loved stand-up as a fan, it wasn't until recently that I decided to embark on the journey of being a comedian myself. I believe what enabled this unexpected development was the insight that when I introduced myself to people and casually mentioned the stuttering through a joke, not only did I relax, but the people with whom I was speaking could also relax more now that they understood why I sound the way that I sound. And this allowed for more effective connections with other. So I intuitively had picked up on the fact that comedy can act as a social lubricant for me to address the stuttering in a way that broke the ice. And then years later, I was in a position where I could get into stand-up.
Excellent. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And you pull a lot of, because I've heard you speak, I actually first heard you speak during Creative Mornings, actually not too many weeks ago. And I've looked up some of your stand-up. And I laughed pretty hard. Are you, I suppose I should just mention to you as well, like a lot of people that listen to my podcast and things like that, a lot of them are actors, performers, directors, casting directors. And I think that there's something interesting. Like I was chatting with a casting director from Atlanta, Georgia, a couple of weeks ago, and she actually chose to do stand up as well. And she chose to do it because it was something that made her scared. Like she was like, and she wanted to. I don't know. I can't think, Joze, also personally for me, of anything that would be more scary than standing up and trying to make people laugh. um, so do you, as far as like this is a really wandering question, and I'm just kind of thinking out loud. So, when you're thinking of material and things like that, do you mostly pull from your own experiences or do you riff on them? Like, I'm just curious.
A lot of my material has come from my experience as a person who stutters. And in that sense, my stand-up has had a very therapeutic role for me as far as self-acceptance and self-love are concerned. I can think of several instances where I might have been going through a difficult period, and then the minute I'm back up on stage and I address my stutter through comedy, something shifts, and it goes from being perceived as an obstacle by myself to this circumstance that I am now more in control of. And
Yeah.
that's really the power of comedy from an individual standpoint. Of course, the goal of stand-up is also to create laughter and enjoyable and entertaining moments. And this is where the craft of comedy comes in terms of actually writing material and
Right.
then repeatedly testing it to gauge audience reaction and such.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I personally have not stood up on a comedy stage. I've done a lot of like comedic roles in films, but they always are like, here's what you need to do, and you stand there and, kind of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So what I find fascinating and interesting is you're kind of touching as well on the therapeutic aspect of that from your life. And you mentioned that it was intuitive, but I'm curious, like, I wrote some of these down and I'm realizing I can write really long questions. Was there someone specific in your life that helped turn that key for you in your head, that opened like that door, and it helped you walk through it, of um, kind of the possibilities that you maybe thought that you didn't have access to? And if there was someone, who was it?
Yeah. So one of the key steps I took early on in my journey was having joined Toastmasters for
Ah,
the
yes.
public speaking. And at the time, that fear was so devastating for me that in my second year of undergrad, I begged my professors to exempt me from all of my presentations, because the thought of having to stand in front of a room of people and stutter made me feel so uncomfortable, so small, that I opted for avoidance as a defense mechanism.
Mhm.
And having heard of Toastmasters, it seemed like something I had to do to overcome this fear that was really preventing me from expressing myself both in public and in less public settings.
Mhm.
After joining Toastmasters and repeatedly exposing myself to the stimulus of public speaking, I was gaining more confidence. And then if we combine a few years of Toastmasters with that insight that joking about my stutter
Right.
was an effective approach, if you combine those two things with the fact that I had heard about this stand-up comedy event, I was able to take that step and get into comedy.
And that makes me think of it's wonderful. You keep setting me up for all these, because I was going to ask you, actually. I was like, if someone wanted to follow in some of your creative footsteps, like, what would your advice be? But you kind of sort of answered that a smidge already. Like, pushing yourself. Toastmasters sounds like a really good way to begin that, if I'm not mistaken. So did your professor just tell you no? Like, you have to do this? Was it like a
No, they were very accommodating. They said, sure, no problem. So I ended up doing this additional homework in lieu of ever having to speak in class. And of course,
Oh, interesting.
it's it's a of course it's a bit bittersweet. On the one hand, we have to appreciate the flexibility and the understanding, while at the same time realizing that what would have helped me more in those situations might have been the professors asking a few follow-up questions about, wait, so what is it about this that you find really uncomfortable?
Right. Right.
And in other words, if we are avoiding something out of the fear of judgment, then we are allowing that fear to control our life, and that leads to essentially our destiny and our possibilities shrinking as a result of allowing these moments to be controlled.
Yeah. I to bring it to constantly bring it back to acting, because I'm an actor. It reminds me so much of, there's a lot, myself included, but there's a lot of actors when I'm chatting with them and stuff, and they're like, I'm like, oh my gosh, you should go and audition for that lead part. And they're like, oh gosh, I could never do that. And I'm like, well, why? You're an actor. Like, how is this any different than what you're already doing? And they're like, well, I've never really been on an audition. And I'm like, well, wait, what? Like literally there's been people, they're like, I'm an actor. And I'm like, well, you've never been to an audition. And I'm like, well, what do you do for work? And they're like, well, I wait tables. And I'm like, but you've never been to an audition. How can you call yourself an actor? Go do it. Go do it. But they don't. They're scared,
Mm.
which is, I don't mean to sound so judgmental, but like get out there in a way.
And it's not easy to get out there because we have to face that fear of rejection, that fear of judgment. And if we
Yes.
are sensitive,
Yes.
it's very easy to engage in these cognitive distortions wherein we end up internalizing the negative events, we end up personalizing them, and
Yes.
we start inferring negative things about ourselves based on external events. When I think about this journey, one thing I often realize is that everyone has a stutter. Everyone has this inner stutter. For someone, it could be the fear of failure. For someone, it could be the fear of judgment, the fear of rejection, the fear of success. And
Ooh, yeah.
and the best way out of those stutters is always through them. There's just no other way.
When you say that everyone has a stutter, I mean, I think about that and I'm just like, ouch. um yeah, yeah. How did you there, like when I'm saying about like actors, like get yourself out there. Like I don't mean to sound flip about it. I'm like, I understand it's hard. Specifically for you, it sounds like there's a drive. Like for you, like if your professors weren't telling you you must go out and do this, for you specifically, like I'm so curious, like where does that drive come from? Is it just a drive to succeed? Is it a drive to what is pushing you to, specifically with considering that you have a stutter, like what's
The
pushed,
fear,
what inspired you? What was the impetus for that? Like I'm kind of repeating a question, but I'm just curious if there is an answer to that.
I have a two-part answer. On the one hand, when I'm asked about what was the turning point, to me, that question is based on a romanticized notion of change, heavily influenced by Hollywood.
Yeah,
One where
absolutely.
all we need for transformation is that singular breakthrough moment when something just clicks as we go running under the rain with, with Katy Perry's fireworks in the background.
Yes.
I have not found that to be the case. For me,
Mhm.
change occurred through what I call millions of micro moments of bravery, during which I repeatedly did what I did not want to do again and again and again, until it became clear to me that fear and action could coexist. And once I would enter these uncomfortable situations with that mindset, I no longer interpreted fear or discomfort as an indication of inaction. I started interpreting those same physiological reactions as an invitation for action. So that's the first part of the question. In terms of how to actually start doing those things we find uncomfortable, whether it is an audition or talking to someone new or
yeah,
at work, some mindset shifts can assist with that process. I'll only share one of them now, which I find quite effective. When I'm at the comedy club, before I'm about to go up on stage, sometimes I'll look at the stage, I'll look at the audience, and I think, oh my God, I'm about to go up there. And it helps to remember that, hey, I'm on this rock in the middle of the universe, in a galaxy. So statistically, while this moment might feel meaningful to me, it is irrelevant in the, or insignificant rather, in the grand scheme of things. And sometimes injecting this tinge of cosmic absurdity allows me to perceive that situation that moments ago was inducing stress or anxiety or fear, it turns those emotions into laughter and excitement.
I love your two-part answer, Joze. It really resonates for me. It reminds me of casting director mentioned to me once. She's like, "You're gonna have some bad auditions, Paul, and that doesn't define you. It's the overall journey." So, yeah, it's a very good answer, and I agree with you on the front too. I love some romantic Hollywood, Katy Perry dancing with the fireworks. It's not always that. I want to move on actually to this question. Is there a misconception that people have about speech impediments that if you could just snap your fingers and people would understand? What is it?
Yeah, so when President Biden was running for the elections last year, I think it was, or 2 years ago, I recall having seen so many comments on social media from people misinterpreting his stutter as a severe lack of coherence or
Yeah.
or competence, and regardless of how one feels about the politics, I'm not American, so it wouldn't even be odd, this odd topic of discussion for me, regardless of that whole angle. I recall realizing that stuttering remains a somewhat mysterious condition that oftentimes gets misinterpreted for a lack of confidence, for nervousness, for social anxiety, for a lack of competence. And while social anxiety is definitely a common repercussion of having to deal with a stutter, because it leads to that fear of judgment for being different, the basis of having a stutter is physical. It's not psychological.
Right.
It's not mental. So I would say that is one of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I'm glad that you mentioned that, and it is bringing back a lot of stuff, because I am American, and there was so much about surrounding that specific moment in time with Biden and what he was. Yeah, that's really interesting. Can I ask? You said that you're not American. Are you? I'm going to guess here. Are you Canadian?
Mm-hmm.
You are. Wonderful. Another question for you.
So, I'm Canadian. I was born and raised in Lebanon, and my family is Armenian. So it's a combination, but I'm based in Toronto, Canada.
Very cool. Is your family, I come from what I consider a huge family. Is your family fairly big as well, or small, or?
Not really. I have a sister who's based in the UK, in London.
Oh, nice. Oh, very nice.
And my parents. How many siblings do you have, Paul?
I am one of 7.
Whoa. Yeah. No.
Yeah. So I have 3 fun questions that I want to ask Joze, but they're kind of light and fun, so I usually save them kind of right before the end. So is there anything that you want to maybe share or say before I ask you these kind of zany questions?
One thing I'll mention is the role that meditation had played in my journey. I do meditate every day, and I can't recommend it enough for anyone looking to learn emotional regulation better.
That's awesome. I've heard a lot about meditation. I haven't actually necessarily done it. Yeah, I just read The Untethered Soul. Have you ever read that book by chance?
Yes. Yeah, Michael.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yes, I had read it maybe a year ago or so. I really liked it. Yeah,
me as well. Me as well. All right, so drum roll or something like that.
Let's go.
Yes. You might have to correct me on this. Question number 1: your favorite Lebanese food dish? Would we say Lebanese or would we say Armenian?
No. These are
they the same or different?
Yeah, no, they are different, but I'm definitely way more familiar with Lebanese cuisine, seeing that. Actually, I'll give you one of each. I'll give you one
Yes,
Lebanese,
do it.
one Armenian. My favorite, my my favorite Lebanese food. It's gonna be really cliche. I am going to say hummus. I love it, and I know it's very popular, but the reason why it is this popular. I also love tabbouleh salad. And then in terms of Armenian food, there's this really, really tasty dish called ich, which I really like.
Each?
Ich, yeah.
Each. Okay. I'm gonna have to look it up. What question number 2, what weapon would you choose in the zombie apocalypse? If there was one.
Assuming this would be a localized zombie apocalypse, my weapon of choice would be a plane.
Ah,
and go elsewhere.
very smart. Third question. What song do you hate because it's catchy? And if you sing it, it gets stuck in your head for the rest of the day.
I've never liked the song Happy, and I get it. I get the appeal, but for some reason, I'm just not a huge fan of that song.
You don't want to raise your hands like it's the I don't remember how the lyrics go, but yeah. That seems to be a really popular song at weddings. Yes. This has been fun. I really appreciate you taking the time, Joze, and sharing your insights and some of your creative journey.
And thank you, Paul, for having me. It's been really interesting to discuss the nuances and intricacies, as well as the links between my journey and the journey of an actor who has to deal with that fear of rejection if they want to fulfill their potential, both professionally and personally. So I'm happy we had this conversation today.
Fantastic. And I believe you have a quote that we can end on by Robert Frost, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, is it actually help me out here, Joze, because I think I'm going to flip the two and I'm like, oh gosh, I'm going to flip the beautiful poem.
There are 3 different quotes that have had a huge impact on me. The first one is by Robert Frost. The best way out is through.
Thank you. There it is. Yes.
The next one is by Marcus Aurelius, and it goes, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. And the last one.
No, it's interesting. One of the Stoics. That's very interesting. Yes.
Exactly. And the last one to conclude is one by the Sufi poet Rumi, and it goes, why do you stay in prison when the door is so wide open.
Thank you, Joze. That was a really good conversation to have. I appreciate your insights and for sharing your experiences. For anyone that's listening, reach out to Joze and let him know that you listened and share some of your thoughts with him. You can find him on Instagram at YesWayJoze. Joze is Joze. So Yesway Joze. You can find him on Instagram. You can find him on Facebook. You can also find him on the web, actually. It's just josepiranian.com. And if anybody has any questions or is interested to find out more about me, you can find me at iampaulcram.com. Thanks, everybody. Let's keep being kind to each other.